In June, the world will pause to watch footballing battles from Berlin to Atlanta, Stuttgart to Port Vila. Wait, Port Vila in Vanuatu? Yes, because just like UEFA, CONMEBOL, and CONCACAF, the OFC Nations Cup brings together Oceania's best footballing nations for a continental showdown. They will compete across two picturesque Pacific islands, kicking off in Port Vila when the Solomon Islands face co-host Vanuatu on the island of Etafe. A day later, the football continues in Suva, Fiji, where Tahiti takes on Samoa. The OFC Nations Cup 2024 will be the 11th edition of OFC's premier international footballing competition. The Oceanic confederation is often forgotten about, especially after Australia exited in 2006, leaving these glistening islands behind for the Asian Confederation. Citing tougher opposition and a better chance for World Cup qualification as its reasons. Okay, in terms of tougher competition, that's understandable. Winning the OFC Nations Cup only grants the victor half a World Cup ticket, an intercontinental playoff spot that historically hasn't favored OFC teams. After the departure of Australia, New Zealand is the only nation left in the region to have ever qualified for a World Cup, something they've managed just twice in their history. With an average FIFA ranking of 166, Oceania is a unique footballing landscape. Its teams come from small island nations where football competes with other sports for attention and resources, and with member nations either leaving for greener pastures or denied entry to the Confederation for a lack of pastures altogether, they've often had to think outside of the box for solutions. Like the Solomon Islands national team, touring through the Netherlands for 3 weeks to develop the squad against amateur sides, coming away with 4 wins, 2 defeats, and 1 draw, by the way. Or Australian players having to pay their own way to compete at the Nations Cup in 2002. But football goes on in the Pacific, and it goes on to the sound of its own drum. Massive scorelines, flying in all directions, each island giving another island worse than the next. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen the word thrashed used more liberally and truly be accurate in more Wikipedia articles than the ones describing OFC matches. Remember Australia's record-breaking 31-0 win over America's Samoa? Results like that are part of the fabric of OFC football. If you love football, this federation has a lot to offer. It's raw and unpolished, incredibly physical at times. Sean Dice would be proud of the strong tackles and the amount of long balls that are played in these matches. On the surface, you might think the history of this competition is simply Australia and New Zealand taking turns lifting the trophy, but that would be doing a disservice to some of the incredible results from unlikely places, and perhaps the greatest underdog story in the history of football. Let's take a closer look at the OFC Nations Cup. It all started in the 70s at the Oceania Cup. New Zealand invited multiple Pacific nations to Auckland for a round-robin competition, which, other than a draw against Tahiti, they comfortably won. The next edition was in 1980, and Tahiti wanted revenge for their loss in the previous final. They started strong, topping their group with ease and beating everyone, including New Zealand, 3-1 and a 12-1 victory over the Solomon Islands along the way. Up they stepped to the final, where they would face Australia, scoring twice, but ultimately losing 4-2 as Australia lifted their first OFC title. But don't worry, this won't be the last you hear of little Tahiti. They've still got a few surprises up their sleeve. In classic OFC fashion, the next edition might go down as the longest football tournament of all time, spanning the course of 1 year from November 1995 to November 1996. Why? Well, they use results from the Polynesia Cup and the Melanesia Cup as qualification. And I can already hear you say, what are those and what are you talking about? Well, listen, when you've got hundreds of Pacific islands participating in football, it can get a little complicated to organize everything. It wasn't complicated for Australia though. They went on to win the final, once again stopping Tahiti at the final hurdle. There was more to play for now as well, as from 1996 onwards, the winner of the OFC Nations Cup would get a ticket to the FIFA Confederations Cup. Remember that competition? Well, for OFC, this was huge. I mean, in what world would we have ever imagined that Ronaldinho would score against New Zealand in 1999, or Ronaldo and Romario both scoring a hat-trick against Australia in 1997? Over the next 5 OFC Nations Cup tournaments, New Zealand and Australia would take turns lifting the title, usually beating each other to the punch in the final, until Australia departed in 2008. And everything flipped on its head at the OFC Nations Cup in 2012. Remember little Tahiti and that island nation of 300,000 people? Well, they might just be the biggest footballing overachievers in the world. After already having been runners-up 3 times, they wanted to take it a step further in 2012. The tournament started well for them, with 3 wins from 3 in their group, including a 10-1 drubbing of Samoa along the way. They squeezed past the Solomon Islands in the semi-final, winning 1-0. And who would they face in the final? New Caledonia. In a surprising turn of events, New Caledonia defeated New Zealand 2-0 in their semi-final, ensuring that for the first time in OFC history, neither Australia nor New Zealand would lift the trophy. New Zealand had found navigating the group stage much more difficult at this OFC Cup. 2 New Caledonia goals scored in the second half were enough to topple the title holders, sparking wild celebrations from the crowd and players at Lawson Tama Stadium in the Solomon Islands. New Zealand coach Ricky Herbert would go on to say that he had never felt such disappointment before in his life, just 2 years after leading largely the same squad of players to the country's second ever World Cup in South Africa in 2010. Where New Zealand left the tournament undefeated after navigating a group with the World Cup title holders at the time, Italy. It seemed football in Oceania had taken massive strides forward, not only from their powerhouse New Zealand representing OFC at the world stage, but from the smaller islands, who were now collecting scalps. And Tahiti, well, they went on to win that final 1-0, granting them a golden ticket to participate in the FIFA Confederations Cup in 2013, where they faced World Cup winner Spain and scored against AFCON champions Nigeria. At the OFC Nations Cup in 2016, New Zealand was once again pushed to the brink by their Pacific neighbours. This time it was Papua New Guinea, as the final went to extra time and penalties, which New Zealand ended up winning. Just. OFC's footballing prowess is steadily improving, and with an almost assured spot at the 2026 World Cup, the future shines as brightly as the sunlit shores they call home. You can catch every game of the OFC Men's Nations Cup 2024 live and free on FIFA Plus. Who knows, you might discover your new favorite team to follow. If you enjoyed this video and found it interesting, please give it a like. Thanks for watching and have a great day.